Hey, breaking news. This report came out of Bloomberg. It was written by Eric Larsen, who was very much involved with the 9/11 terrorist events for years and has been posting documents and files uploaded to every viral media he could find. He's been very thorough over the last, I think, 20 years, I think now. And the title is Saudi-backed LIV Golf is using PGA suit to get data on 9/11 families, court told. Now, before I read this report, for those who don't know, LIV Golf is actually an entity backed by the Saudi Arabian government. And to read this earlier article, which will put more into retrospect about what came out tonight. This is from Al Monitor, and this was written in July of last year. 9/11 victims protest Saudi-funded LIV Golf event at Trump course. LIV Golf is backed by Crown Prince Salman's public investment fund, is gaining serious momentum in the golf world, but victims of September 11 oppose the league due to the Saudi government's alleged role in the attacks. Well, it's no longer alleged. With the latest document releases under the Biden administration and Operation Encore, which was an FBI investigation in the follow-up to Pent Bomb regarding Saudi financing to certain individuals who were in part of the 9/11 attacks. And we now have names which are unredacted in the latest files. So we do have people in the Saudi government who worked in the Saudi government who were funding at least three of the 9/11 hijackers. Khalid al-Bidar, Nawaf al-Hakmi, and Hani Hanjour. Now, who are these Saudi government operatives? Well, Muwassid al-Jarrah, who worked for the Islamic Ministry of Affairs here in Washington, D.C., Omar al-Bayoumi, who was a government contractor for the Saudi Arabian Arab presidency, and, of course, Fahad al-Tamari, who was an imam at the King Fahd Mosque in Los Angeles, Culver City. And in this article, it states that LIV Golf is coming to Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey today, which is July 29, 2022, which is just about an hour west of New York City. Talk about irony. Saudi's Sovereign Wealth Fund backed league continues to take the golf world by storm, landing American golf superstar Bubba Watson. But victims of the September 11 attacks and their families are protesting the league's event due to the Saudi government's alleged connection to the tragedy. Tim Froelich, who survived the attack in 2001, said the golfers should consider this before taking LIV huge payouts. Froelich went on to say it's disgusting golfers decide to do business with the Saudi kingdom. And you look, I mean, if you need 9/11 to show you that Saudi government is reprehensible, I mean, my goodness, take a look at their history. It's all right there in social media. But to celebrities like, Phil Mickelson or Bubba Watson, what the hell do they care? They're millionaires many times over. And if they're going to get more money from the Saudi government, so be it. I'll do business with the devil, right? It also goes on to say LIV Golf burst into the golf scene earlier this year, peeling away such big names as Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson, Sergio Garcia from the PGA Tour, which is the dominant competition in the United States. LIV Golf has reportedly offered top golfers hundreds of millions of dollars to join. That's how much money they needed to persuade them. The league also pays considerably higher guaranteed money than the PGA Tour. Well, of course. If you're going to get these Harvard League, Christian golf players to play with the disgraceful monarch of the Saudi Arabian government, who are involved with a number of terrorist incidents, around the world by prompting and promulgating the Wahhabi Salafist faith, which the country is divided upon, and which helped to create terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Abu Sayyaf, and Jaish-e-Mohammed, and Jemaah Islamiyah, which are responsible for bombings and killings of thousands of people around the world. You're going to have to persuade these people with that much money and say, all right, well, I'll kiss the devil on the cheek. LIV Golf is financially backed by the Public Investment Fund, which is led by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and serves as the kingdom's sovereign wealth fund. The league has been controversial from the beginning due to Saudi Arabia's human rights record, as well as the 9/11 issue. Nowhere do we hear about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, an American journalist, right? little bit too close to comfort. Now, that's for a little bit of the background. Now, currently, and if you thought things couldn't get worse, holy mackerel, did this article come out? Thank you, Eric Larsen. Saudi Arabian-financed LIV Golf and its feud with PGA Tour Incorporated has divided fans, sets of players' allegiances, and sparked legal battles. It has now taken a more sinister turn. LIV, backed by the $676 billion Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund. This is how they persuade Congress, by the way. That's how much money, and that's nothing as compared to Israel, which doesn't pay a damn dime. Saudi Arabia has to because nobody has any affiliations with them. Was accused on Tuesday of using its U.S. lawsuit against PGA to build an intelligence file on families of 9/11 victims who have been critical of the kingdom and its new professional golf circuit. The upstart has countered that the PGA is secretly training a smear campaign to take it down. So that the victims' families that were speaking out critically, like Brett Eagleson, who is the leader of the, who's been the most vocal regarding the LIV golf tournament, and I forgot the name of the group that he's heading, and I apologize, but he's been the most outspoken, the most vocal, and he's a victim, along with others, regarding the Saudi government using a U.S. law firm to collect intelligence on the victims' families. Astonishing. At the heart of the matter is PGA's public relations firm, Clout Public Affairs, led by an ex-chief of staff to U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. One of its other clients is 9/11 Justice. That's Brett Eagleson's group, which is involved in a separate suit against Saudi Arabia relating to the 2001 terrorist attacks and other atrocities, including the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. There it is. Now, Clout is also challenging a subpoena issued by LIV and accusing the tour of tapping a third-party firm to track the 9/11 group. Clout said, LIV has brazenly hired a firm in the U.S. Can you imagine a firm in the U.S. helping a foreign entity, which is involved with the terrorist events of September 11, 2001, and collecting data on the victims' families who are trying to get payment in a civil suit against a country that's involved in the worst terrorist events since Pearl Harbor, while simultaneously, through the underlying lawsuit, using antitrust discovery to now sift Clout's communications with these families, even if they have nothing to do with LIV Golf or golfers. And we're going to read about the filing because I have it here. LIV's lawyers Keith Frost, Quinn Emanuel Urquhart, and Sullivan, hope I said that right, didn't immediately respond to a message seeking comment. They can't. It's an ongoing case. The legal wrangling marks to dramatic escalation in the fight between the two competing golf circuits, which until now has largely centered around the Saudi project, luring some of the sport's biggest stars, including Phil Mickelson, Cameron Smith, with huge paychecks and unconventional tournaments. LIV critics have argued Saudi Arabia is using its splashing golf events, including two hosted at properties owned by former President Donald Trump. Goes to show you that doesn't mean Democrats and Republicans can't agree on one thing. They can agree on this. That's all that matters. And fuck you and fuck your human rights, U.S. persons. That's what they're saying. Sorry to be frank, but that's what they're saying. I don't know why anybody votes. I think it's unethical. When PGA began suspending players who left for LIV, the Saudi tour sued, calling the PGA an entrenched monopolist that was trying to choke off its supply of star golfers. Can you believe that? As part of its evidence-gathering process, LIV demanded that Clout hand over its communications with the PGA and any internal documents about the U.S. tour. LIV last month sued to enforce the subpoena, arguing that the U.S. Golf Tour has hired Clout in part to arrange for 9/11 families to protest at LIV events. Boo-hoo. LIV said it didn't buy the PGA's claim that it needed to protect U.S. golf from the taint of Saudi Arabia. LIV said in a motion to force Clout to comply with the subpoena, quote, as it turns out, the PGA Tour itself has been secretly fomenting the very anti-Saudi sentiment that it now uses to justify its legal conduct. Well, good. LIV has said the PGA turned over evidence in the antitrust case demonstrating that it's organized and likely funded the 9/11 family's protests. Good again. Hey, all is not lost. Clout is balking at LIV's demands, contending it violates the First Amendment privilege between Clout and its clients. It blasted the upstart for suggesting that the PGA needed to coordinate anti-Saudi sentiment in the U.S., accusing LIV of being in a dream world. Clout's president is David Polanski, who, along with serving as Cruz's chief of staff, was a senior advisor to Scott Walker's 2016 presidential campaign. Chief Operating Officer Samantha Dravis worked at the Environmental Protection Agency during the Trump administration. Clout said the firm and 9/11 Justice have a reasonable fear that disclosure of the internal communications will provoke retaliation. It said the subpoena could reveal phone numbers, individual names, and email addresses or information about plans to continue criticizing Saudi Arabia, all of which could well lead to hacking or other retaliation. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that Saudi Arabia is involved with intelligence gathering through nefarious means. This is how they caught Jamal Khashoggi, using a software run by a prince, and forgive me, I forgot his name, that was involved with collecting data from Jamal Khashoggi on orders from Mohammed bin Salman, whose father, King Salman, is currently, he has a stroke, and running the country is Jamal Khashoggi himself. And what he did when he came into power was basically crush all dissent, have them under house arrest, blackmail them, take away their finances, in which the opposition was Mohammed Prince bin Nayef, who was the legal heir, but Salman, who's a brute, had the power of his father and the other family lines that were behind the Salman clan, other than Nayef. The problem with the Saudi government doesn't just stem from the intelligence Mahabeth, or the General Intelligence Directorate. It goes even further than that, and talks about the shaping of the country, in which I have talked about ad nauseum. I've written articles about it too. That helps to permeate this problem of not just a perverted version of Wahhabism, but also this corrupt regime, which has been corrupt since its inception. Billions of dollars went to the reconstruction of Mecca and Medina through the Saudi bin Laden group. And also a lot of the money went to these clans, which are called the Sudati Seven, which are the 7 sons of the founder of Saudi Arabia, Ibn Saud. And it's unknown how many family members are within this line. Some say 5,000, some say 15,000. Let's just say 10,000. But not everybody gets along. But this is what separates them from the rest of the country, which live in abject poverty. Meanwhile, these bloated creeps are basically hand over fist from the Saudi oil boom of the 1980s, 70s, and 80s that helped grow the kingdom. And now it relies on the United States to act as its military arm and also to help regulate the oil market. Now, Saudi Arabia knows their strength, And that's why earlier last year, when they rejected Biden's claim to pump more barrels per hour, they said no, because they know what they're worth. They can go to Great Britain, they could go to China, they can go to Russia and say, hey, we'll sell oil cheaper to you than the United States. And the United States is kaput, finito. But that doesn't mean the United States are going to run out of oil. We got oil here in the States. Plenty of it. But Saudi Arabia poses a great strategic arm into the region, just like Israel does. It's the only reason why we're allied with both of these corrupt countries. But the Saudi government, along with this brutal affiliation with the Wahhabi, Salafi religious group that exists even now in the country, and don't believe that this country is reformed, it's not. So when you have both this corruption of the kingdom and this brutal, primitive form of Salafist Islam, I mean, you get a terrible mixture and this Frankenstein monster that exists today, which helped to create some of the most repressive clerics and individuals that were born out of this ideology, like Osama bin Laden, like Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, Abu Muhammad al-Suri. I could go on and on. Muhammad Atta, or Marwan al-Shayyi, Ahmed Bassam, all they didn't come from Saudi Arabia, but the ideas came from. And Clout is basically trying to fight back on this monolith that is backed by the U.S. government. And so let's go back to the suit. As you can see, the United States District Court of Columbia, LIV Golf versus Clout Public Affairs. This is the memorandum of law in support of motion to compel Clout Public Affairs to comply with subpoena to produce documents. I mean, imagine now, we have a foreign entity basically trying to force a law firm to hand over documents so they can monitor critics of the country regarding their affiliation with the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. Just think of the shameful irony behind it. And as you can see, there's the plaintiff's relevant allegations. The background: LIV's amended complaint, I'll put it further, describes in detail the tour schemes to block LIV's effective entry into the relevant markets. Plaintiffs allege that the tour is a monopolist. We've read this before. Further, LIV alleges that the PGA Tour has threatened tour members, agents, and business partners with punishment if the players joined LIV Golf. That's their alleged, which ain't true. The tour also conspire with the European Tour and others to exclude LIV and other new entrants in violation of Section 1 of the Sherman Act. And I'll provide this document, this filing, in the description so you can read it. And as you can see, it's a bit redacted. And this is deplorable what the kingdom is doing, and I'm not surprised at it, because they know for certain that at some point the U.S. government is basically going to protect its interests in the Middle East, and it will protect Saudi Arabia. Why do you think we haven't had all the documents and files released from the National Archives? Because the presidents, like Biden, like Trump, like Bush, like Obama, are protecting their interests. Their interests are not with the American people. And it took pressure. By the way, when Biden left that meeting with Crown Prince Salman, incidentally, a couple of weeks later, like 2 weeks later, that newest batch of the Operation Encores came out. And very few people covered it. I covered it for sure. I thought it was a big deal. I even made a podcast episode out of it. And for the first time in history, we saw names to go with the Saudi government and their links with the 9/11 hijackers. Barely anyone covered it. In fact, the first media entity that covered it was NorthJersey.com. And later on, CBS, ABC, but only for a week. And of course, the FBI doesn't really care to make it public. Now, you had FBI agents that were working on the case who were from the Penn bomb investigation. And it's a small unit, but they are trying. I mean, not everybody in the FBI is paid off. We have honest people still in the FBI. And, thanks to them, their investigations uncovered a multitude of evidence showing that the Saudi government indeed has connections with some of the 9/11 hijackers, which the Saudi government still denies, even with the latest revelations. So because they know that the White House, no matter who's the president, no matter what political party they're affiliated with, are going to protect their interests. And what does that say to the American people? Well, I think it's high time that the American people stop their divisive bullshit and act as a whole unit and protest viscerally and vocally. Show your disgust with the White House protecting the monarchy of Saudi Arabia, the brutal regime under Crown Prince Salman. We need more people to become involved in this situation, or else we're never going to solve 9/11.